You are live.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone to the regular monthly meeting of the Maritime Advisory Board of the City of Annapolis. As is my custom, I will just. All right, thank you. Welcome everyone to the regular monthly meeting of the. Seems like there's some delay there, but maybe we've got it.
You should be good now. I fixed it.
Okay, thank you. And so what I will do is just go around and coincidentally go around with everyone introduce everyone to whoever might be listening. And I just do it according to how they're on my screen. And it's fortuitous that we have our new member, Alan Miller, in the upper left-hand corner. Welcome to the board. And I sent you some information, but we look forward to having you join us. I suspect you know some of the players already, and you'll soon get to know some of the other players. One quick question for you. Were you able to get sworn in?
No, I am on the mayor's calendar for next Wednesday.
Okay.
They're going to call me if there's an earlier date.
Okay. Well, there's nothing that requires you to us to have to count a vote for you. At this meeting, there's one small piece of legislation, but you didn't consider it anyway. So we can probably get a quorum. We can probably get a affirmative vote to adjourn without your vote. So we should be okay. Next on my list is Peter Trogdon, a member of the board. Next to Peter is Beth Bellis, who is our harbor master. Then Frida Wildy, who's a member of the board. We have Debbie Goslin, who's a member of the board. Hope Stewart, who is a staff. You are the MBE?
SMBE liaison.
SMBE. I didn't put the S in there.
That's okay. Lots of letters.
Mike Tomasini, who's a member of the board. Jake Iverson, who is a regular guest. We have Madeline from our keeping us in order on City of Annapolis TV, and Kimberly Consoli is our reporter. And Jake, what I forgot to do is you are with the Annapolis School of Seamanship. Is that correct?
Watermark.
Alan, sorry, wrong. I was saying Jake, but I meant Alan. Alan, you're with ASOS?
Yes, I'm with ASOS over here.
Okay, what do you do with ASOS?
Pretty much everything. President and operations manager, more closely an operations manager. I run the boats, run the captains, keep the classrooms filled with instructors, and just kind of make things work over here every day. You
giving them a lesson on the ever forward and what not to do.
Yeah, it's really popular right now, and a couple of our students are in SUNY right now, and it's becoming a point of conversation up there. As to the blame game has already started.
My son graduated from Kings Point in ships as a third mate, and I sent him the article from this morning and the pictures, and the same thing is happening. So, all right. In no particular, we'll just go down the agenda. Everyone has a copy. With Alan's joining the board. I redid the MIAB, this county board roster. Alan, for your benefit, what we do is the county has a companion board or a comparable board to us called the Maritime Industry Advisory Board, and the MAB is a ex officio member of that board, and they meet once a month. And so we have set up a rotating participation by each of our members so that no one person has to sit through their board meetings. Scott Allen went and it was just alphabetical, so I inserted you into the list so you would come up in whatever the month it is. I think you may get lucky because you would come up in July and they may not meet in July, so you may get a bye anyway. I did reach out to Andy Fagley, who was supposed to cover March, and ask him to see if he could find someone to swap with. I cannot cover for him because I'm not going to be in town So I don't know if Andy has done that yet or not, but he may reach out to one of you to see if you could cover that, cover that meeting for him. And then he would cover a meeting for you. Economic development update. Hope, are you filling in for Stephen also?
I am, yes, we kind of
Okay.
take turns. So
Yep.
on our end, we're currently finalizing the policy for leasing parking spaces for outdoor dining. So we hope to have that rolled out pretty soon. And also a reminder, if you haven't seen the press release, there's a new website, accessannapolis.com, and it provides transportation and parking options for when Hillman is under construction.
And is Hillman still slated to start demolition the end of the month?
End of month or beginning of April. Yeah.
Okay. So lots of activities going to start happening.
Yeah, very soon.
The other question was, is there been, what has been the, and I have to confess, I'm a little behind on the legislation about just basically doing away with parking in some of the zones for restaurants.
That is still going through the legislative process.
Okay. I know there was certainly interest in Eastport, and there was another bill that was put in about changing the standards for restaurants in B1 that Alderman Schandelmeyer and Alderman Karma introduced, maybe 11, 21, or 22. Have you seen that one?
No, we haven't been part of that. That was probably planning and zoning.
Yeah, it was introduced on first reader, and the only reason I bring it up is because a number of us are either at work or live in Eastport, and what it does, although it's not a real extensive amendment, but it puts B1 along with other zones eligible by special exception for for rooftop dining, live entertainment. And so that may have some, even though it wasn't introduced by Alderman Arnett, it was introduced by Alderman Schandelmeyer and Alderman Karma, who have B1 in their zones. Eastport has a stretch of B1 zoning, particularly the stretch along where VIN 909 is, but it goes back farther back down Bay Ridge Avenue there. So there could be some impact in Eastport as all of these bills start to come together. So I just point that out. Duncan, anything else, Hope?
No, that's it.
Okay, any questions for Hope? All right, we don't have Duncan here. I have not seen any movement or any substantive change to the status of the comprehensive plan. I think I would have probably heard if I had seen it, but I have not. So we'll just wait for Duncan to come back or come on if he comes in. Debbie, what's happening, if anything, with the NDZ application?
I reached out to Donna last week to ask her for an update, and I haven't heard from her, which is unusual. So I'm not sure if she's on vacation or what, but I imagine when she checks her email, she will get back to us.
Probably the end of the legislature is coming up and she's getting hounded by the legislature for something. Berta's house. A couple of things have happened. On a positive note, the city is now the proud owner, as of last Tuesday, apparently, of the Berta's house and the long dock. And I don't know, I haven't talked to Ashley about what the plan is for the Berta's house itself, but there was a stakeholders online meeting on yesterday hosted by Harbor Master Bellis about policy considerations for the use of the long dock, and there was input from a variety of stakeholders. I provided a few comments. Jen Kay from Woodwind provided comments. Jake Iverson from Watermark provided comments. Mike Tomasini provided comments. And then there were other comments from Alderman Arnett, Alderman Tierney, David Gerald, and then I bailed out for another meeting when it was opened up to anybody else. And so maybe, Mike, if you were still there, were there any different comments than what we'd already heard about the concerns and the policy?
Yeah, so by the way, great job, Beth. It was a really well-run meeting.
Right.
I thought it was very informative, super excited about the opportunities that are before us and the long dock and the Burgess House. Alice Estrada came forward and presented a pretty good outline of what their concerns are and how they want to have their needs met. Outside of that, Beth, I don't remember anybody else who came forward to formally comment.
No, I didn't think that she.
You are echoing.
Something's going on with your mic, Beth.
No, you're at the bottom of the C.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just nod for me. It was only Alice, I think, that came forward with additional comments. I don't remember anybody else making formal comments outside of Sarah Elfrith and some others that maybe you missed towards the end, Terry. But
Okay. Well, they had talked earlier too.
I think it was just Alice.
Did Wendy O'Sullivan offer comments?
Yeah, she did.
Okay. And those, for those of you that don't know, Wendy O'Sullivan's with the National Park Service, who has been interested in the project as the city dock area as a gateway to the Chesapeake as part of the National Park Service. So there's a lot of moving parts. But in that same regard, Frida sent everyone a very interesting clip from the vessel Maiden, which had done the whitbread, but not one of the whitbreads that came to Annapolis. I think it was the one that was after Annapolis, but was the all-female, all-woman crew that did the whitbread and actually did quite well. I think they took they won a couple of legs and they were second overall, if I remember correctly. So it was a great showing by them back in '88, and now they're doing a round the world tour promoting women's education in a variety of developing and developed countries. So it's a great project, and they're going to be here. I think you said it was basically the second and third week of May, partly at City Dock, partly at various yacht clubs. So that we're getting one of our first good uses of the long dock. I assume that's where they'll go. Now that the city has it. So that's, I think that's pretty much it on where we are with the Burgess House. Lots of things coming together between the demolition of Hillman Garage, which eventually will lead to the city dock area revamping, revitalizing or vitalizing city dock in another 18 months or so. But I think we have an opportunity to have a learning curve as we, while with the long dock this summer before the city dock gets really underway in renovations or whatever's going to happen. Street and parks, Beth, anything new other than just we're ongoing with continuing upgrades?
I think Beth dropped off, Terry, trying to fix her microphone.
Okay. We'll come back to that if she gets back on. 04021 electric mobility. I sent everyone a copy of the comments that I sent into the council on as a legislative referral report, simply as comments. I did note that the comments were unanimous, and I just had not heard from one person to confirm, but everyone I heard from was supportive of the comments that we made. They sent those in, and they were incorporated into that legislation. Now, what I don't know is what happened last night. Did anybody listen? Ross, you can tell us, I guess, what happened with 04021 last night.
It was passed unanimously with
Okay.
the amendments that the Finance Committee offered.
Okay. So does that mean we're buying a boat or we're not buying a boat?
Well, you know, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how these processes work. Now, remind people, for 7 years, the $6.5 million CIP project was on the books to rebuild the Eastport Fire Station. Do you see a new fire station there? So these things are as much placeholders or earmarks. The mayor needed money to be appropriated so that if he finds a boat, or the city finds a boat, it isn't the mayor's boat, there'll be money there that they can make a good faith down payment. But there's still a lot of steps. The city manager outlined a 4-step program, which starts with, and Jake, I think you can speak to this too, is there a demand for a ferry, let alone an e-ferry? And I'm not sure exactly where they're going to get that information, but after that, there are other processes. I have it here somewhere. So all of these things go through a rigorous process. And if it turns out that it's a viable project, it'll move forward. And it'll move forward in its own time. And I think the council was unanimous that e-mobility is the way to go. And I think that the mayor is correct that this could be an amenity that would attract people to the city. He's also correct in that it's not pulling money out of other pots. These are all anticipated to be grant funds that are coming from the county, the state, and the federal government. I thought that this body, the Maritime Advisory Group, when you met with the mayor the last time, gave him very sound advice. I watched him in other presentations. It's clear that he listened to what you said, and he modified his presentation to the Transportation Committee and then again to the Environmental Matters Committee. So it's a work in progress, and it will happen of its own accord. And when it's viable, I think he now more and more understands that this is something that is in direct competition with the private sector. Jake, you and he are taking a trip somewhere, and I'd like to ride on your electric boats, your electric taxis as well. But I think ultimately it's going to end up something where the city is the enabler and maybe also will be supportive, but it's really going to end up being something that is going to run in the private sector to the extent that there's a demand for it. And that's how these things work out. They start off as grand, shiny visions, just as the Eastport Fire Station did. And then priorities tend to find the right levels. And I think this will work out fine. I think that the comments that Beth and Jake made at the meeting about Coast Guard certification resonated with the mayor. He realized that this is something that is one of the steps that has to be taken. So I keep cautioning my colleagues on the council and on the Civic Association, don't let this be the tail that wags the dog. The primary purpose here is e-transit, e-mobility, and the ferry is just one part of it, and it'll find the right level.
One of I think and it was Scott and Peter Trogdon, I think, were sort of the two main proponents, but I think the overarching thing that came across, and I hope we led with that in the comments that we made, was that we certainly, and it goes to your issue about, is there a demand? We actually have an opportunity to do some trial programs. I mean, you're not going to get an e-boat for 18 months anyway, and the Hillman garage is going to start getting demolished. So if we're going to try to get some data, this summer is probably a time to collect some of that data and see what the demand is.
Right. And we're not the first ferry system in the country. In fact, Alabama has a ferry that takes people back and forth across the river. It's an electric ferry. It's an automobile ferry, but it is an electric ferry. And so there's a lot of, when we get the team, the city staff doing the research to go through the analysis steps that David put forth, there'll be other places to look at to see how well it works.
You might just earmark Jacksonville, Florida as a ferry, really out towards Mayport, but it's a very efficient little ferry that runs, and it's about the same distance as, maybe a little bit longer than across across Spa Creek. So that's
Right.
another one that runs there. And it's a small auto ferry. I mean, it's maybe 3 or 4 cars. So, all right. 022 mooring permits. I hope everyone got a chance to take a look at the redraft that was worked out with Ashley, Beth, myself. I had sent a copy to Ross that seemed to, that I believe addresses the concerns that we had. Beth, you want to just give a quick summary of what how it now reads? If your microphone is working.
Is it still like underwater?
You're still echoing, so I'll go ahead and just, there are 2 provisions in it. 2 substantive provisions. The first provision is that if a mooring is in disuse for more than 30 days, it can be forfeited, revert back to the city. And that 30-day threshold was because Beth feels, rightly so, that that's about the maximum amount of time that her staff can monitor an absentee mooring holder. However, we also recognize that mooring holders in the summertime may go out of the area, whether it's going cruising for more than 30 days, going up to New England, whatever. And so we added a second provision that says, and it's not a permissive, it's just a notice provision, that if you intend to be gone more than 30 days, you provide notice to the harbor master of your anticipated departure date and your anticipated return date. And then the third provision in there is that if you are gone for more than 70 days, then the forfeiture provision kicks back in. And Beth, you can nod if you want. I think that pretty much sums up the 3 alternatives, or the 3 prongs of the revised legislation.
I think it does. I'm not sure how bad my audio is, but
Much better.
okay, good. So I need to reread it again. Maybe Terry, you can enlighten me. Does it say that they have to ask permission, or they can do what they like?
Well, it's not do what they like. They have to give you notice.
Okay,
And
but they could, in theory, every single summer leave for 69 days.
in theory, with proper notice, in theory, they could leave for 69 days. And that's, they've got the mooring for a year, so it's not unrealistic that they might be gone in some of the nicer months, but that's just, the way, that's the trade-off, for that they at least now have to provide notice, and it's a maximum of 70 days. So you've got, that's only 2 months and 10 days out of the main part of the season. So
Yeah, and I definitely understand your concerns. And then there was one more piece of it. I'm trying to remember.
I am.
Oh, yeah, I think definitely when this first went to draft, there were missing pieces. And so I think that's why at first glance, Terry, you were like, this doesn't work at all.
Right.
So the parts that I had originally included, Ashley put back in, and then she tweaked some things to hope that the group would find more amenable. So, given this discussion, I'd be pleased in any way if we could tweak it to make it more enforceable. And I understand that people want to go on trips. So it's fine with me, however the group wants to rule. Because we've done fine so far. And again, we only have 4 or 5 out of 40 that are causing a problem. So a minor tweak would be appreciated.
So I would then entertain this. I mean, this was drafted by Ashley after our conversations. I've looked at it. It seemed to address at least in substance, the issues that we had. It leaves in the 30 days. If you don't tell Beth you're going to be gone, if you tell Beth you're going to be gone, you can have 70 days. And so that sort of allows someone who is responsible to say, yes, I'm going to be gone. But if you don't say it and you're gone 30 days, you can risk forfeiture. I have no further issue with it. I don't know if anyone else does. I guess I'll open it up for discussion and I'll just go around. Peter, do you have any additional thoughts or discussion?
Not at this time.
Frida?
No, thank you. Nothing else to add. Thank you.
Debbie?
Are you able to rent it out when they're gone? If you've been notified that they're going to be gone for 30 days?
The answer is that I saw Ross shaking his head in the affirmative. That got, no, then now it's in the negative. That got to be a bit of a morass, and in this iteration, it is not being rented out in the interim.
And then what I would add to that is the amount of manpower and confusion to change that in the software from an annual to a transient, with the amount of turnover with my staff, would probably not make that financially advantageous, and also would create a lot of havoc on our team. Unless this was happening like half of the mooring balls, but it's happening to 3 of them or 4 of them. So I would say it's not really needed, and it will cause more trouble than it's worth.
And the answer is yes, it is not in there to allow that. Mike?
Nope. Seems like a good call.
And I have no comments. Is there a motion to favorably recommend 0222 as revised? Somebody has to speak up. Mr. Trogdon has moved to adopt, to recommend 0222 as revised. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess Kimberly, you got that? All right, that we will send those comments. I'll send those comments in this week, and then it'll be in Ross's court whenever it goes back up to council. All right, I had down here under new business. Welcome.
Jody has her hand up, Terry.
I'm sorry.
Terry?
Go ahead.
Jake actually just sent me an email that he got from Donna on February 28th. So it's a few weeks back, but in that email, she said that the no discharge zone for Anne Arundel County waters was published in the Maryland Register on Friday, 2/25. So the 30-day public comment period was open as of then. And it should go into effect July 1st, 2022.
But there's a delay period for commercial operations, right?
With the exception of U.S. Coast Guard inspected passenger vessels, yes, subchapter T, blah, 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 for which this regulation will become effective on July 1st, 2025.
Beth, I know this is going back a ways when this legislation was, or this proposal was being debated. The emphasis seemed to be on education, not enforcement. Is there anything, has that changed? And B, what have you given any thought to, now that this is moving forward, what that education process will be?
So you're correct. The emphasis will be on education, but I will say that Ms. Morrow, and then maybe Debbie, you can remember this better than I can, emphasize that the harbor master will not be responsible for any enforcement. That doesn't mean we're not interested in educating people. That doesn't mean we're going to not work harder to do pump outs. And if someone tells us that they have a type 2 or a type 1 MSD, that we wouldn't say, okay, but you can't use that here. So our focus is entirely on education, because we've actually been excluded from enforcement by the verbiage that's in DNR stuff. And, you know, I'm okay with that, because we just only have but so much manpower.
Okay. All right, anybody else have any other questions, comments on the NDZ? Looks like it's in the final throes of being enacted and implemented, and we will see how it goes. Probably nobody will notice a difference whatsoever at this point. All right, I was about to say to welcome new regular members, Mike Tomasini and Alan Miller. Mike, there was some debate whether or not you had to be sworn in again or not. I don't know if they ever resolved that, but I'm treating you as already sworn. So and Ellen is going to get sworn in this week, so we'll have everybody up and voting.
I haven't gotten anything to that effect, so I've assumed that my previous swearing in covers me for this one.
Right, and Ross, that leaves an open vacancy on your part. I'd sent you a note about that your designee now is no longer a designee. He has to do this for sure for 4 years. So
Good. Well, I know Jim Conlon wants to be on the board, so.
There is an application and vetting process. There also is criteria about your association with the maritime industry in a formal manner. So I've had a couple of other inquiries, and I've had to point that out, that it's not that there are criteria of sorts for membership. So far our two new regular members certainly qualify. Scott is not here. He was inclined to stay on as vice chair. I will entertain a motion from anyone who wants to nominate somebody else, or we can just kick this can down the road until Scott participates probably in the March meeting. He was at a family event, some kind of a family thing tonight. So unless somebody's got a burning desire to be a chair or a vice chair, you can contact me separately, and I certainly will entertain your participation at the chair level. Last but not least, Jake, what would be a good time frame, other than obviously not the week of Blue Angels, or that, for making an offer to the new council members for a tour?
I would say 60 to 70 degrees and sunny, and really any time in the morning would be good. Weekdays are best.
weekdays and mornings. All right, I will give some thought to coordinating perhaps with the mayor's office and think about maybe something in maybe mid, early May can be iffy. Maybe post commissioning week, early June, maybe timeframe.
Sure.
Okay, that's, I just wanted to, I don't want to get into any, any seasonal stuff that you're going to be busy with, but first week of June or so might work out.
Sure.
All right. That's all I have on the agenda. Is there any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When I jumped off, was there more discussion about the long dock, and is the Maritime Advisory Board submitting something official about their feelings about that?
I don't think
Does it help you, Beth, if we discuss it and get you something?
it
I
depends
mean,
on
I
what
think
we
that's
get.
mostly about that's mostly the chair's decision, I feel. I really appreciated Mr. Lomax's attendance, also Jake, also Mike. I think it was helpful. I was a little disappointed that the nonprofits did not participate. They did not sign up to speak. And so other than Alice, I think in some people's view, it might have appeared one-sided, but I did take everyone's comments on my email. I did get a significant amount of comments, put them all on a Google sheet. I shared them with the city manager. I can certainly share them with more people. But I guess my question is just, is it in the Maritime Advisory Board's best interest to have a position, or I will leave that up to Terry. I think that's his decision.
Well, let me just step back a minute. I don't know how many of the members have saw the policy, but I think what I'll do is I should, Beth, can you send because mine's all scribbled up. Can you send, and I'm not as worried about the applications themselves, but your policy statement for that, which was that had the city's purpose, and then the not-for-profit, the recreational transient, and the commercial,
So I can send that agenda item, yes, and I know what you're talking about. However, that doesn't have the nitty-gritty that requires a credit card and insurance. So I'm not sure how down in the weeds this board wants to get.
and what I would plan to do is you would send it to the members. We'll take it up at the next meeting. I will tell the members that there were only my two comments, other than congratulating the city on the acquisition, et cetera, was that there were two main issues that sort of cropped up, and one of them had already been raised, and I tagged on to it. And that was if a nonprofit vessel, and we'll just take the Pride of Baltimore, for example, if the Pride of Baltimore comes in and ties up at the dock, and they will have the right to sell tickets for their educational programs, for a tour, for whatever. And the comment there was, wait a minute, if they are going to sell tickets and make money, then they should not dock for free. They should have to pay some dockage, just like a commercial vessel does if they are running a commercial operation. And that comment resonated across a number of people. So that was the major comment about the nonprofits. The other comment that I made about the nonprofits is that there's a provision that the nonprofits can reserve space at City Dock up to 4 times a year for up to 7 consecutive days each. Well, when you do the math, that's 1 month per visiting vessel. 4 visiting vessels will take up the majority of the, could take up the majority of the summer if they were so inclined. And I'm thinking more in terms of local boats, whether it be, a Annapolis Maritime Museum boat that just reserves 4 7-day periods and takes up 28 days out of the summer, or whether there are 3 or 4 other boats that come up, that are somewhat local, that come here and take up a big chunk of time. And pretty soon you've got the dock being monopolized de facto. So I raised concern about the fact that one vessel could take up 28 days a year, and knowing that the actual window of time is really, April or May to, October, November. The other thing that I raised was in the commercial aspect. There was, unlike in the not-for-profit that had a limit on the number of days, albeit 28 days, there was no limit on the number of days that a particular vessel on the commercial side could occupy the dock. So again, a commercial vessel could, I hesitate to use the word monopolize, but certainly take up significant time at the dock. And I think the overall goal was, at least in this early year or two, was to provide opportunity for a variety of businesses, nonprofits, to share the dock, to get a feel for, do we want fishing boats? Do we want charter fishing? Do we want, what works down there? What doesn't work down there? And by making the potential that only 3 or 4 or 5 operations or boats would be down there, we don't get that breadth of activity. So that was the other comment I made, but those were comments that had come up at one time or another during some of our discussions early on around the city dock plan. And so when Beth circulates the position paper, or the policy, the proposed policy, just look at it in the context of the nonprofits, the commercial activities, and recreational and transient boats. And we'll take it up. I'll just leave it on the agenda for the next meeting.
And if you want me to, I can just follow up on a couple of those things.
Sure.
One is, interestingly enough, during the meeting, the only people that asked to speak were commercial vessels. And so my hunch is that many of the nonprofits feel like they could stomach the proposed policy. I'm sure there's going to be some complaints and some people that want to change it, but we tried to really prioritize educational and historic vessels. And I'm hoping we accomplish that. I'm certain the first year is going to be a little bit of trial and error. I understand that. And to your point about commercial vessels, I haven't really thought through how the Burtis dock could be different than the charter dock, but if it is not different in terms of fees, if I have to pay $2.50 per foot for 90 minutes, I really do believe that the fee will keep anyone from monopolizing that dock. If I have a 100-foot boat and I have to pay $250 for 90 minutes, I'm not trying to monopolize that because it's too much overhead. Like, I can't afford that. So that's why that portion wasn't addressed, because I thought the money would take care of itself. That was my thought anyway. So we talked about the commercial stuff. We didn't talk about the four weeks. So what I would say, I understand what you're saying, Terry, and I thought it was a very good point. I was surprised you brought it up during the meeting. You're absolutely right. If between January 1st and April 1st, the nonprofits can book anything they want and everything they want up to 4 weeks per vessel, in theory, they could book every single week. And I'm not sure that's in conflict with what the mayor wants. I think the mayor's super interested in having these educational and historic vessels. But I do think 4 weeks of the year for each vessel, considering there's only 12 months and each vessel could get an entire month, is reasonably generous. But I will tell you, I did get some pushback, very minor, but I did get some boats saying, but we'd like to come for many months. And what I would say about that, is that the novelty does wear off. People are super excited to see the links, and they're super excited to see the pride. And I think it's a great advertisement for the city. But when they're there for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and they're not taking tours, they're kind of just storing it. And I did have, some folks in the nonprofit realm that were like, well, we need to be there to like make repairs on our boat. And I get it. I'm sure you do need to make repairs on your boat, but to take up premium waterfront to do repairs in your boat, I'm not sure that's the vision. So I do think that the 4 weeks is more than generous. So I'll be curious to see how it comes out in the wash. And I appreciate any influence that this board could give, based on their knowledge and experience, what they think of our first draft and how we might tweak it to make it best for everybody.
The issue, I think, that and why you got those comments about coming and doing repairs is a great big neon sign that says no fee dockage. They can bring the boat there and store it if it's no fee. And so I'm sure somebody has, 1 or 2 have said, oh, well, so what if we only run a couple of weeks of tours? We'll sit there and do maintenance and enjoy downtown Annapolis for the other 2 weeks.
That has absolutely happened over and over again. And I'm not sure that that's what the mayor wants.
I agree. And I don't think it's what's ought to happen at, at that dock when you're also trying to put in commercial vessels, fishing vessels and other things that are coming and going, to have, and I'll take the Pride of Baltimore as an example, because that would take up the whole dock. Somebody just take up the whole dock for, 4 weeks in July. So anyway, that was why I made that comment, is that it goes to the fact that it's free. So therefore, let's take 4 weeks in Annapolis. A lot of people.
And that's why we really want people to have some skin in the game, pay electric. And also if you cancel and if you don't cancel and you don't show up, there's some penalty. And I will say some of the most vocal folks after the meeting were boats like Sip Ahoy, which is like a tiki boat, a parasailing boat, which could be exciting and different. And I know they're not educational or like historic, but I think it could be interesting to try to find just a little bit of dock space to have them give it a try.
Right. I agree. That was what the City Dock Action Committee was talking about, was that we've got an opportunity for a dock that's not grant encumbered to try a lot of different things. So
What point does it become a business, an operation where a lease is required? Has that been defined? I look forward to the opportunity to talk about all this at our next meeting.
So in my view, you're paying charter fees, which, as you know, Debbie, they're exorbitant. They're not cheap. So if it doesn't make sense in your business model to pay charter fees and you're seeking a lease, then that would be incumbent on that business to try to seek that lease. So for example, there's a little piece of dock behind where the police boats sit, on that dock that's adjacent to the academy that could fit like a 40-foot boat. In my view, that's not a super marketable spot for transient boats. It's a little tight, but it would be a great spot for a parasailing boat, or like a tiki boat, or like one of these boats that would be willing to pay the market value for a lease there. I mean, that'll obviously be up to the city's management to decide if that makes sense or not. But there's very little space left, in my view, for any more lease spot, because there's so many commercial boats that are clamoring for a spot. And so if somebody wants to say, like, let's redefine the charter policy for certain companies, smaller boats, that'll be up to the city to talk about. But it has to make sense because it takes a lot of manpower to run charter docks. It takes a lot of effort to book those, make sure we have insurance and, make sure we don't have any double bookings. So in my view, our charter fees are reasonable. They're not cheap, but they're reasonable. And I wouldn't like to see something super cheap because we will just lose money and I will a little bit lose my mind because I don't have enough manpower for it.
They haven't gone up since the first time they were implemented. So I agree they're reasonable.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have comments? Any?
Are we going to discuss it at our next meeting?
Yes, yes, it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack, Beth. If you're able, I think we'd probably like to see the comments you got after the meeting from people whose voices we weren't able to hear, and then we can frame it up a little bit better.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is you want me to share the spreadsheet with all the extra emails, which I'm fine with, and then also share Terry, you don't want the actual application.
No, I mean, you can include them. They're only a couple pages each, but that's nothing more than the application implementing what's in the policy. So I'm not.
I can send all three out. I'm gonna write myself a note so I don't forget. I
Okay.
can send all three out tomorrow. So we want so make sure I understand. We want the actual application, the notes for the meeting. What was the third thing?
Well, the agenda, you call it the agenda, the May 15, 2022 agenda proposed policy for newly acquired docks. I think there were 2 applications that went with that. And then as
Mike wants the
pointed out,
spreadsheet.
the
With all
spreadsheet
the comments.
and then anybody who wants to listen to I assume the meeting is stored is on.
It wasn't streamed. The city manager asked that it not be streamed.
Oh, okay. So it's not, was it recorded?
No,
Oh, okay. Well, got it.
but it will, I guess it will be going to like at least 2 committees and city council. So it's going to be more than a month before it's implemented, as far as I can tell. Maybe Alderman Arnett could speak to that, but I think it's going to be like a month before it's implemented, and there are more opportunities for people to be heard.
Yeah, I think Alderman Arnett had mentioned that it's a rule that has to go through the council process.
The rule is that it comes to the Rules Committee. I don't remember I don't think there was any other alderperson there to ask for it. So the rules in terms of promulgating rules and procedures is that it has to be put on the website and it has to go to the Rules Committee. Council does not approve rules and procedures, but we can review it. And if we think there's something that needs to be changed, we'll actually talk to the staff. If there's not an agreement, we can always write legislation, but I'm assuming there'll be agreement. So it'll go to the Rules Committee, it'll be discussed, people will be able to speak, and it'll go on its merry way.
I think that I hesitate to use the word uncharted territory, but unchartered territory. We're just getting this asset, and now everybody is scrambling to take advantage of it, and it's going to just have to shake itself out a little bit, I think, as we go along. It's not going to be perfect the first year, and there's going to be bugs, but that's how we learn about how to make it better.
I hope everyone keeps that in the forefront of their mind. We're going to do our very best, but I'm sure there's going to be some hiccups.
Without a doubt. All right, anybody else on any topic? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Thomasini moved, Ms. Goslin seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alan, welcome again. See you next month. and see everybody else next month. And Kimberly, thank you for making, oh,